大家好，欢迎来到我的当今美国节目。今天呢，将播出我和杜瑞秋演这个《洋妞在北京》的这位女作家，我们俩的对话的下集。这个对话呢是用英文，因为她的中文呢还不能够到达这个做节目的水平，所以我们都是用英文进行的。我在上一集呢做了关于这个节目的一些简介，没有去听的人呢，大家可以去听一下，了解我们讲了些什么。I'm very interested because we were born in the same year. So I want to know if there's a generational differences in the US. For example, I feel like I'm closer to the people in America who are baby boomers. They're very idealistic. They have been influenced by the Beat generation. You know, they experienced the whole 1960s, the cultural renaissance. I'm like that, although I'm much younger, but China in the 1980s, short time of cultural renaissance, and I was very idealistic. We read Sigmund Freud, all those Beat generation, Henry Miller. So I feel like we have more in common than I have with my friends in China who are born in the 1980s, and they are very materialistic. But I think they are more like the me generation in the US. And now I read something about the young Americans become more left-wing.
This is a funny question for me, right? Because my parents are boomers. And my husband's parents are boomers, and my children are teenagers.
Yes.
And my husband's, it's very hard to be more left than my husband and I are. My husband's parents are radical leftists. And they ran in the 1970s, they ran an anti-Vietnam War group called the Weather Underground.
Yes.
They were the heads of that group. So they're extremely radical and extremely left. And we admire their ideas greatly, you know? Yeah. And my kids are also quite radical, but my kids sometimes feel like the sort of, there is a kind of optimism that Zaid, my husband, and I show that our teenagers find laughable. Like sometimes our teenagers are so cynical, and other times they're so idealistic and young and innocent. And I think all young people have that combination. And in every era, maybe it takes a particular shape in terms of what it does to respond to the needs of that era or the constraints of that era or the contexts of that era. And I would add that this era is unprecedented. I've never seen anything like this pandemic. I don't think any of us has. And my daughters, who are 13 and 16, have responded in such a resilient way. And it makes me think that they're ultimately going to be like the boomers, that they're going to feel like they can change the world. And they're also going to feel a deep and righteous sense that we shouldn't have made the world this big of a mess for them, that this is on us. And that, you know, we elected our tyrannical leader, and now he's my children's president. And so I feel kind of, again, it's like the way I feel about Sino-US relations. I feel this deep sense of hope and this deep sense of gratitude to the people who are doing the right thing. And I also feel a sense of fear that we've gone in the wrong direction for 4 years here, and that has cost us.
Yeah, I think the impact will linger for a long time.
I think so too.
It has changed the people's perspective of how they see other races or other ethnicities. Also, the polarization. It seems that people only get along with people who think alike, and then they just block, unfriend those who think very differently.
I don't think that will last forever. And I want to just say about racial justice in America, that I feel like, first of all, my hat tip to Black Lives Matter and to the people who have organized that for years and years and years and years. I mean, in some way, there's some sense that that's a new movement, but that's a grassroots movement that's been underway in the United States for years. And it's a response to systemic racism that has been the underpinning of America forever. And I feel really hopeful. I feel like suddenly that movement is getting recognition and it's becoming more mainstream, more accepted in a way that's just dazzling. I think there's a really seismic change happening in America that's making people recognize and acknowledge what many people have known forever. Certainly people of color have realized that America has a systemic racism problem. But I think more people are realizing that that's our central problem and that it's one that we need to address with real change soon, immediately. And I think there are real efforts underway to fix that problem. And that if we do that, it will mean amazing progress for America, and progress that some years I felt was very, very far on the horizon. I think there's also solidarity. And I think it's like the Sino-US friendship, like we need to build solidarity. We need to build organizations. We need to organize. And at the moment, we need to vote. We need to vote out white supremacists. We can't have a white supremacist government. And then pretend that it's easy to make change on the ground. That's not, it has to work in both directions at the same time. I think there's a lot of camaraderie on the ground and in American cities, and that focusing on that and building from what we already have is in our best interest.
Can you tell people why most of the universities, especially the great ones, professors and the students, are more leaning toward the left side?
I think there are people on both sides in most organizations. I'm not a moral relativist. I think like there's a moral imperative not to be a white supremacist country. I don't think there's good people on both sides, as we've heard the president say. I think actually white supremacy is terrible and damaging. And it's not just damaging for people of color, it's damaging for our entire society. If we live in a society that's permeated by injustice, we all suffer. And justice is what we need. And we need good public schools. And we need, kids to have hope in every neighborhood, not just wealthy neighborhoods. It's also obvious. And we need healthcare for all Americans. When Americans get sick, they should get healthcare. Chinese people, when they get sick, get healthcare, right? Canadians, when they get sick, get healthcare. It's a no-brainer if you are a humane thinker. And I think, most intellectuals give deep thought to other people and to the lives of other human beings and to the patterns of history. And we consider which patterns are the ones we'd like to avoid repeating. And so the more literary you are and the more humane you are, the more likely you are to lean left, because left politics are humane. They're about empathy. They're about dignifying other people's human lives. That's why the Democrats are wearing masks, because they care about protecting the lives even of people who are not them. And that's just such a basic humane idea, but it now belongs to one side in America and not to the other.
So they say, it's a Christian country. When you are here, you should believe in Christianity. And this is a country founded by white people, and you don't listen to the white people. What do you try to change? If you change the Christian side of the country, it's going to go chaotic. They follow that type of mentality religiously. And sometimes, they see the word 白左, like leftist, as a dirty word.
Right.
I'm shocked.
For me, that description of America is hollow and terrible. Like, to me, America is built on inclusivity, and it's built on allowing people across our borders, and it's built on citizenship and everybody getting to be part of the democratic process, and people being allowed to express views that differ from one another's. And it's also built on a real sense of kind of humanity and dignity. And it's built on a criminal past of enslaving people and denying people basic human rights. So I feel, as I always feel in history, like we have choices that we can make, and we can decide whether to follow the worst impulses of our history or the best impulses, whether to make progress or whether to go backwards. And it seems very clear to me, which direction is the right one in which to move.
Yes. Somehow I wonder if something has to do with education. They listen to certain information. They don't really do the fact check.
Well, I think there's been a concerted effort to diminish public education. And a lot of our public schools are still really good, but we should be pumping money into the public schools.
Exactly.
We should value our teachers,
Yes.
I don't understand why public education gets the bad name and the kind of unfair limited resources that it gets. And I think if we funneled resources into public education, our public education would be better. It's so obvious, and we have lots of money, and we need to redirect resources so that kids are getting reasonable education.
People who were born in the 1970s, are we called Generation X here?
Yeah, I think Gen X. I think we're Gen X, right?
So,
of course, we all grew up in the 80s, which was its own extremely specific era, both in terms of style and in terms of substance. I think, I grew up in the Reagan years and then kind of came of age during Clinton's reign. And, I came of age in Beijing. Like, I moved to Beijing when I was 21. And it's the first place where I had my own bank account. It's the first place where I rented my own apartment in Fangzhuang. And so my worldview and the way I think of myself has kind of more to do with geographical.
Like a 80后, 90后, 00后, talk about that all the time. When you tell people you belong to which decade, people kind of know where your thinkings are.
What are our qualities?
I think it doesn't matter if you are in China or you are in the States. You bought the house when you could still afford it. Now the young people in China and here, I mean, they have more debts, pay a lot of more to own a home. Properties have gone up so much. So we're lucky in a way that we can afford to have basic stuff. And at the same time, we're caught between the idealistic 1960s and also China is like to make money is glorious. So we are partially idealistic, partially lucky, so we don't have to worry too much about the material stuff. That's how people view us in China for that generation.
Like, I think there's a lot of truth to that. And there's truth to it here too. And the materialism of the 1980s was also obviously in effect in America. You can see it in the culture, if you watch all the 1980s movies, which I grew up watching, the John Hughes movies and even Dirty Dancing, it was always about sort of class and who was wealthy, and it was very white, very heteronormative, very cis. Like, we didn't have I don't think we had a huge appreciation for the range of human experience. And I feel like, again, this is a mark of progress. And I appreciate it in our youngsters now. I feel like they have a better way of understanding that humans are more diverse, across a whole range of spectrums.
Young people have more debt, homes more expensive, and more kids live with their parents.
That is the case. And I mean, right now, obviously, we're in an economic disaster. So many people have lost their jobs, people have lost their houses. A lot of my brilliant young students who had just carved out lives for themselves have moved back home with their parents, not always for financial reasons, sometimes just to stay safe. Sometimes because they don't want to be disconnected from their parents in a way that will prevent them from visiting. America, our COVID numbers are still rising. So people are still social distanced. People are not able to visit their parents, and lots of people are back to living at home. But it's funny, like, I always wanted a Yuan with my family. Yes. One of the things I loved about Beijing was that you got to live with your parents. My family is very close. I love my parents, and I would love to have them like living next door or we live pretty close. Like, we can drive to my parents' house in 3 hours. So we go as often as we can. But I always really liked the Chinese way of having everybody in the family stay together forever. In Foreign Babes in Beijing, in the show,洋妞在北京, we all lived in a Yuan. And there were the in-laws and the ex-wife and the young yo, the girlfriend, and we all kind of cohabitated in this one environment. And obviously that's funny for a TV drama, but it also always just struck me as really nice. Like, I would love to have my family, my parents and my husband's parents, like, on site with us. I think it would be lovely, and especially lovely for the kids. So we've tried to duplicate that a little bit in America. And I think some people are kind of moving into a situation that's more like that. And this is not to say that I'm glad that we're in an economic crisis, but I think the way that families have been brought closer might ultimately also have kind of nice silver linings years from now when we look back at this really difficult time.
I find it funny that you live in a high rise because, many Chinese people move to the United States so they can have, we call it a 别墅, like a single family house. We all used to living in a high rise. When I look at your view, it reminded me of, I lived in Shenzhen for 5 years. I had just a view like that, like a very high and a bridge and ocean. It's the ocean or the lake. I don't know.
That's Lake Michigan.
Yeah.
I love high rises. I love cities. I don't like living in a house. It makes me feel nervous and scared. I always like to be high up. It makes me feel like I can see everything that's happening. It makes me feel safe, like a bird or something.
But I think it's kind of atypical for people to live in a high rise.
Right. I've always lived in high rise. Except my parents, I mean, I grew up in a single family house. My parents have a house. But when I went to college in New York, my first night in the dorm, I was on the 18th floor and I just felt like so safe and cozy and I felt like anonymous. Like, and I also just like other people. I think in this way, I'm actually very Chinese. I think like the more people, the more runao.
Yes.
I like to be close to other people. So I prefer, of course, this is terrible during COVID, but I like to be in an apartment building where there are other families and other kids. And I like public spaces. I don't want to have a yard. That's the park right across the street and we go to the lake. I like to see other families grilling food and having picnics. For me, a yard is very lonely and strange. I don't like the suburbs. I've never liked the suburbs at all. I find the suburbs quiet and still and creepy. And I find cities like, you know, lively and exciting, like Beijing. I find them exciting and full of people and full of stories. Yeah. Lots to look at. I prefer it.
It has character. The suburb everywhere is almost the same.
Right.
And then so you meet the same people and you know what they're going to say to you. Everything is so predictable, you know?
Yeah.
How about your kids? You have space, you want them to run around. So how do they like living in a high rise?
They're used to it. We actually have a lot of space. This is a very big apartment. My kids, they each have their own room. And they have beautiful views of the city. And my kids have never lived on the ground. I mean, we have a summer place on a river in California. So in the summer, they run around barefoot and they swim and they garden and they can sleep. And we have like a little perch that we sleep in. So they get a little bit of nature. But we're pretty good about getting out and about. So I think they're used to it. And I think they also kind of like it.
Yes.
I think it feels like home to them. They've never known anything else. I mean, I'll be curious to see when they're grown-ups if they choose to live up high or if they also buy houses and live on the ground. I don't know yet who they'll be. But they've reminded it. And they're both girls and they're pretty quiet and artsy. They're not, I think if we had really rambunctious kiddos and we had needed an outside space that was designated as our own, we would have gone that route.
On my children because they have lived in both high rises and now in a suburban setting.
How old are they?
They are 8, 10, and 14.
Yeah, so very close. Yeah.
Yes.
And how are they doing during the pandemic? Are they okay? Are they doing online school?
They're doing online school, but they're pretty much addicted to video games, which I find it very frustrating. So I send them to play golf, play tennis.
Let me just say, first of all, let's be friends. Second of all, I think every mom in every society feels like maybe everybody else is doing a better job. I think it's part of motherhood to feel a lot of self-doubt. It sounds to me, if your kids are playing golf and tennis during the pandemic, you're doing a great job. So I would just, because I think motherhood comes with a lot of self-doubt and a lot of self-criticism, you know?
Last weekend, I upgraded their piano to a Steinway.
Wow, that's exciting.
Them to play more Chopin.
Wow, that sounds like very good parenting. And you're probably cooking meals and you probably snuggle them at night and you probably tell them stories and you probably get them books and you probably read the work that they make. And those are all huge parts of being a mom. And having your own friends that doesn't seem selfish to me. You know, I think most of us need a massive army of well, for me, women friends. Like yes. I have a lot of female friends and they're artists and they're writers and they're actors and directors, and their work and their love sustain me. Mm-hmm. And in all of my books, I write about this. Like I write in all of my novels, almost no matter what the novel is about, I write about women being kind to each other and women supporting and encouraging and honestly saving each other, because that's my experience in the world. Mm-hmm. It's my lived experience. And I think in America, there's sometimes this awful narrative about women kind of competing or being mean to each other, and I do not see that in the world. I only see it in kind of bad movies and bad art. I think it's a kind of, I think it's a way to avoid feminist unity. I'm a big feminist, and I think female friendship is one of the most important parts of my entire life. And it has been since I was tiny. Since I was a little tiny kid, I've always relied so much on my girlfriends to keep me above water.
I like girlfriends too. I think we can live without a husband. We go to have high tea, fashion shows, or we go to book clubs, yoga together, or cooking together.
I think that's true. And everything happens in Beijing at a different pace.
I can have male friends. They just drop their wives and to help us or to have like a baijiu to drink with us. Here, if somebody does that, what's wrong? Do you guys have an affair?
Right.
So
I do think that Beijing is a little bit more forgiving of sort of just all sorts of social opportunities and possibilities, including 喝白酒. Let's say it like this: when you come to 芝加哥，我们一起喝白酒. Also, we can bring our husbands.
Oh, yes, that's great. Your husband is a playwright, right?
Right.
Tell me a little bit about him. I'm curious.
He's very sweet and very political. And he's a professor too. He teaches at Northwestern.
Okay.
And we've been married 17 years this year. And we get along really well, which turns out to be a miracle in this current context, because we are always together. We're together 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, the four of us. We've been joking about it. Actually, we have a very close family, and I really like his parents, and he really loves my parents. So it's been a good situation for us family-wise, even while the world burns. And we're just trying to kind of contribute in ways that are meaningful to the world. So, writing and phone banking for Biden, and sending letters and postcards and texts, and trying to donate money to the Senate races that are going to matter. And we're trying to be moral citizens of the world. I mean, he and we have very different strengths and weaknesses, but we have the same sensibility. So I love him and I love his work, and I've loved him forever, like since the first second that I knew him.
You guys have the same values.
Yes, we have the same values.
So are you going to do something together, like the TV series or any movies?
He and I we are co-writing the Foreign Babes in Beijing TV series.
Mm-hmm.
He's also a screenwriter and writes for TV, and that we have that collaborative project. And then another one of my projects, a novel I wrote called Banshee, which I'm also going to send you. That's my very risque and crazy and sort of feminist, sexy novel.
I love these words. Wow, it got me excited.
That novel is also, I'm developing that one for TV, and he and I are somewhat working on it together.
That's great.
Great. It was so fun to meet you. Me too.
I wish we could, talk more in the future, and then maybe you can come back another time.
I would love that. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes.
And I'm so glad to know you, and I'm so glad we're friends.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.